The bell above the grocery store door jingled sharply, cutting through the low hum of a winter afternoon. I had my hands full, balancing my cart, a few groceries rattling against the metal sides. That's when I noticed her, a small, elderly woman, her coat patched but neat, glancing nervously at the cashier line. Her eyes held a kind of worry I couldn't immediately place. She looked like someone who had seen too many winters. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched a list written in faded ink, curling at the edges like old leaves. I had exactly enough time before my own errands became urgent, and something in her posture pulled at me, a mixture of humility and quiet desperation. I stepped forward. "Can I help you with your groceries?" I asked. Her eyes flickered at me, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might decline, embarrassed or unsure, but then she nodded, a faint smile breaking the tension that seemed to cling to her shoulders. By the time we reached the checkout, her items, mostly simple staples, bread, milk, a few canned goods, lay neatly in the cart. I surprised myself by saying, "Let me cover this." She froze, and then a laugh, soft but shaky, escaped her lips. "Are you sure?" She whispered, "I don't like accepting charity." "I insist," I said. Something about her made insisting feel less like generosity and more like obligation. The cashier rang up the total, and I handed over my card. She leaned in just before we stepped away, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I blinked, taken off guard. Her words were strange, almost nonsensical, in the bright fluorescent light of the store. I laughed nervously. I'm not sure I understand." Her smile was fleeting, almost mischievous, like she knew a secret I couldn't even guess at. Then she shuffled out, groceries in hand, and disappeared into the gray chill of the street. I shook my head, half amused, half curious. That evening, my husband left for a work trip, just overnight. Nothing dramatic, but her words had settled in my mind like a snowflake on a window, fragile but impossible to ignore. Morning came, pale and icy. I stepped onto the porch to brush the frost from the railing, and that's when I saw it. The yard was not just covered in snow. The snow was patterned, disturbed, as if someone or something had been moving there in the night. My breath caught. There were footprints, impossibly small and delicate, leading from the edge of the driveway toward the house, then stopping abruptly, as though whoever had made them vanished mid-step. I leaned closer, squinting, trying to make sense of the tracks. And then the air shifted. A whisper echoed, soft, almost playful, yet chilling. I swear I heard her voice, the same elderly tone from the store. "Don't touch it." I stumbled back, my heart racing, my coffee forgotten on the porch table. What had seemed like a simple kindness yesterday had suddenly become a warning, heavy and urgent. Something waited in the snow, something that had watched me since the moment I left the store. I wanted to call my husband, but the phone felt heavy in my hand, as if the moment itself resisted any interference. And then, a faint shimmer ran across the surface of the snow, like someone or something was walking just beneath it. The sunlight caught it for a split second, blinding me, and when my eyes cleared, the footprints had shifted closer to the house. I froze, my mind raced with questions that had no answers. Who was she really, and what did she mean by her warning? The snow seemed to pulse beneath my gaze, alive, almost watching, and as I stepped back toward the door, a sense of dread settled over me like a second layer of frost. Whatever had whispered to me was still here, waiting, patient. The moment I closed the door behind me, the house felt colder than it ever had, even with the thermostat cranked up. I rubbed my arms, shivering, though I wasn't sure if it was the chill or the lingering unease from the snow outside. Coffee no longer tempted me. Even the familiar hum of the fridge sounded different, sharper, like a low warning tone, vibrating through the walls. My gaze kept drifting to the window. To that yard, the pristine white had become sinister, an untouched canvas, except for the footprints that now seemed to taunt me with every glance. I tried to dismiss it. Logic demanded I do. Maybe a stray animal, maybe my imagination. But when I peeked closer, one set of tracks hadn't come from the street. They began abruptly near the porch, leading away in no pattern that made sense, looping back toward the house. My phone buzzed. It was my husband, texting that he had landed safely. Relief should have washed over me, but it didn't. Instead, I felt watched, as if the snow outside had eyes that no one else could see. I opened the blinds fully. The footprints hadn't changed, but now I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint shimmer along the edge of the driveway, like a thin, icy thread weaving between the snowflakes. It wasn't natural, and it didn't belong. A memory from the store returned, the elderly woman's whisper. The urgency in her tone, it gnawed at my mind. Don't touch the snow in your yard. It sounded absurd yesterday, quaint even. Today, it carried the weight of inevitability. Curiosity gnawed at me despite fear. I wanted to see it, to prove to myself it was nothing. Tentatively, I reached for my boots. My fingers trembling. The floor creaked beneath my weight, louder than it should have been, as though the house itself were warning me. The moment my foot touched the first step of the porch, a sudden gust of wind whirled through the yard, sending flakes into the air like tiny shards of glass. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, and then I saw it, a handprint, not in the snow, not of flesh and blood, but a perfect imprint, like frost had taken human form and pressed itself against the ground. I froze, my pulse roared in my ears. I wanted to call out, to scream, but no sound emerged. The imprint seemed to pulse faintly, a delicate glow beneath the snow, almost beckoning. I stepped closer. The moment I did, the snow beneath the handprint shifted. The glow intensified, and I heard it, soft, teasing, familiar. You shouldn't have come. I stumbled back again, slipping on the ice, my coat snagging on the railing. When I looked up, the yard seemed empty, innocent, yet every fiber of my being screamed otherwise. The smell came next, a faint scent of iron, metallic and cold, like blood mixed with frost. It lingered just beneath the icy surface. Impossible yet undeniable. I gagged, pressed my hand to my mouth, and stumbled inside. I locked the door behind me, but the sense of eyes on me didn't leave. The house felt smaller, compressed. Every shadow stretched toward me, every creak a whisper, every reflection in the window a distorted mimicry of myself. I tried to rationalize it, maybe she know. It was simply a ghost story waiting to happen. But deep down, I knew the woman at the store wasn't merely a stranger. She had been a warning, and her words, absurd as they sounded, had been a line drawn in invisible frost across my life. I sank into a chair, heart pounding, and glanced at the window again. The snow had shifted, the footprints had multiplied, new shapes appearing where none had been before. Small, precise, human-like, yet impossibly tiny. They led from the edge of the yard toward the porch, stopping just short of my feet. I realized, with sudden, terrifying clarity, that the warning hadn't been about curiosity. It had been about survival, and whatever was out there was patient. Night fell like a velvet trap over the house, swallowing every familiar sound. The glow of the streetlights barely reached the edges of my yard, leaving the snow in shadows that seemed almost liquid. I couldn't stop staring at it, though part of me screamed to close the curtains, pretend it wasn't alive. The phone buzzed again, my husband checking in. I didn't answer. How could I explain the impossible tracks? The faint glimmer beneath the snow, the whispering that lingered even when the wind was still. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat on the couch, trying to ground myself, but the house wasn't mine tonight. Every floorboard groaned under invisible weight. Every draft whispered my name, soft and deliberate. Then I heard it, a slow, deliberate scratching from the porch. My stomach dropped, not nails on wood, not wind rattling, but something moving under the snow, scraping across the frozen deck. I froze, my breath caught. The memory of the handprint came back, perfect, impossible, glowing faintly. And now it seemed as if it had multiplied. Thin, icy fingers pressed against the glass door from the outside, leaving frosted outlines where no hands could have been. I wanted to run, my legs wouldn't obey. The scratching turned into a rhythm, a steady beat like a warning drum. My mind raced through every story, every urban legend, every whispered tale of warning, and it all came back to one point. The woman's words were no joke. Don't touch the snow. I had never touched it, not even out of curiosity, and yet here it was, approaching anyway. The snow on the porch shifted unnaturally, forming shapes, patterns that were vaguely human, but twisted and impossible. My pulse raced, my hands shook. A faint tapping sounded behind me. I spun around, nothing, just the walls, the furniture, the shadows, and then, a whisper again, closer this time, unmistakable, almost in my ear. You ignored me. I bolted to the kitchen, grabbed a heavy pan, and returned to the living room, scanning the yard. The snow was moving, or at least it looked like it was moving. Tiny footprints twisted in impossible angles, forming a spiral toward the door. The frost glowed faintly under the moonlight, pale blue, almost beckoning me. I remembered the grocery store, the old woman's eyes, the tremble in her voice. She had known, she had seen this long before it reached me. And now I understood. Her warning was not about the snow itself, but about what lived within it. The clock ticked loudly, minutes felt like hours. My ears strained to hear over my own heartbeat, over the low whisper of the wind, over the faint, almost musical tapping against the porch railing. A shadow flickered just beyond the glass. A figure, or a distortion of one, lurched toward me, then vanished into the night. The snow followed its motion, rippling as though alive. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught. I wanted to run, but the house felt like a cage. Every instinct screamed at me to leave the snow untouched. I hadn't, and yet it was here, patient, waiting for something I couldn't name. Then I noticed the mailbox. The lid shifted slightly, as if something small and deliberate had brushed against it. I froze. The snow around it glimmered faintly. A new trail of footprints, tiny and precise, led from the mailbox toward the porch, toward me. I realized, with absolute clarity, that the snow itself was no longer just a warning. It was a harbinger. And it wasn't done. I tried to sleep, but the night refused me. Every shadow in my room shifted unnaturally, stretching like liquid, pooling against corners, crawling along the walls. Even the familiar hum of the heater sounded distorted, hollow, like a warning drum. A faint crunching echoed in the hallway. My heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself it was the wind. I told myself it was imagination. But the whispers returned, sharper this time, threading through the walls. Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't. I leapt out of bed. My bare feet met the cold wood floor. But it wasn't the floor I felt, it was something beneath it. A faint frost seemed to have crept along the baseboards, delicate crystalline fingers pressing upward, as if reaching. I backed toward the kitchen. The living room window was no longer just frosted. Snow, or something that mimicked it, pressed against the glass from the inside. Tiny handprints sliding down. Leaving delicate trails, I swallowed hard. The air smelled faintly metallic. The scent of blood and ice mingled, impossible but undeniable. I grabbed the broom, desperate for a weapon. But the second I lifted it, the snow on the floor rippled, forming small spirals around the legs of my furniture. Every sweep of the broom seemed to push it aside, only for it to return immediately, reshaping, shifting, almost alive. I thought of the woman in the store, her eyes sharp and knowing, her whisper echoing in my memory. When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard. She hadn't meant the porch, she hadn't meant the yard alone. She had meant anywhere it could reach. Then I saw it, a faint glimmer at the edge of the kitchen, rising slowly, coalescing into shape. Tiny footprints formed a spiral, curling inward, and from that spiral, a shape began to emerge, small, delicate, humanoid but impossibly thin. Its outline shimmered in pale blue light, like frost given life. I froze, my hands shook, my voice failed me. The figure moved with an elegance that was both mesmerizing and horrifying, stepping onto the floor with no sound, leaving crystalline footprints that sparkled faintly, glowing against the dim lamplight. It stopped, tilting its head, almost curious. And then I heard the whisper again. Louder, closer, unmistakable. You shouldn't have ignored me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the hallways twisted unnaturally now, stretching, elongating, reshaping themselves. The door to the porch, the threshold I had sworn never to cross, pulsed faintly, glowing from within. I realized with sickening clarity, this wasn't just snow. This was an intelligence, patient, watchful, growing bolder with every heartbeat I spent inside. The little figure raised one crystalline hand and pointed at me. I couldn't look away. My mind screamed to resist, to flee, but my body froze. And then the whispers multiplied. Dozens of voices, all faint, all echoing around me. Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't. I stumbled backward, my back hit the wall, and the frost surged upward, climbing my arms like icy snakes. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the cold, as if the air itself had turned against me. I realized in that moment that ignoring the warning hadn't kept me safe. It had drawn the snow inside, invited it, fed it, and now there was no turning back. The house was no longer mine. The walls breathed. The floor shivered beneath me. I stumbled into the living room, panicked only to find the snow had multiplied, covering the carpet in a thin, frost-like layer that glimmered faintly with movement. I tried the front door, locked. The knob rattled under my shaking hand, but it didn't budge. The snow had reached inside and claimed it. Every exit was blocked, not physically entirely, but by the sense of presence, thick, suffocating watching. A low hum began from the walls, barely audible at first, then rising to a pulse that matched my heartbeat. The whispers intensified, overlapping, echoing through the house like a choir of warning voices. Don't touch it, don't. I ran to the kitchen, desperate for something, anything to defend myself. The windows were fogged from the cold, but small, crystalline shapes pressed against them from outside, shifting constantly, forming impossible patterns, like snow had learned geometry. Then I saw movement in the living room again, something small, humanoid but impossible. Its shape shimmered like frost in candlelight, but it wasn't just standing there. It was watching me, calculating, tilting its head with an intelligence that made my stomach drop. I tried to speak, "What are you?" My words were cut off by a sudden whoosh. Snow surged across the floor like a wave. Pushing me backward, I hit the wall hard, gasping, coughing. The frost licked my boots, cold seeping into my bones. The figure advanced, no sound, only a faint glow tracing its thin form. The tiny footprints multiplied beneath it, spiraling and curling, as if dancing in anticipation. I felt its gaze, direct, piercing, aware of every heartbeat, every shallow breath. Then the whisper again, closer, almost in my ear. "You ignored me, now you must see." I screamed, but the sound was muffled by the snow crawling up the walls. The room seemed to stretch and bend around me. The ceiling was no longer stationary. It shimmered like an icy sky, the light bending and twisting. I stumbled toward the stairs, desperate for the upstairs bedroom. Somewhere to hide, somewhere to escape. But the snow anticipated me. It flowed ahead, covering each step in a thin, icy carpet that seemed alive. Every time I reached for the railing, frost spiraled upward, curling around my fingers like delicate snakes. I fell, the cold biting into my skin, frost spreading up my arms. My breath came in harsh, visible gasps. The figure floated closer, tiny hands outstretched, reaching, beckoning. And then I understood, this wasn't snow. It wasn't simply a warning. It was a memory, a guardian, a reckoning. The elderly woman at the store had seen this long ago. She had lived with it, survived it. And now, through her cryptic words, she had chosen me. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to summon any ounce of courage. My eyes locked on the shimmering figure. The whispers formed words I could almost understand. "Touch it, or it touches you first." Before I could react, frost surged like liquid lightning across the floor. The glow intensified, blinding. I felt weightless, as though gravity itself had betrayed me. A chill filled every nerve ending, every thought, until the entire room seemed suspended in ice. I realized with a sickening certainty, my life would never be the same. And the snow, alive, intelligent, patient, was only beginning. I pressed my forehead against the wall, shivering, trying to make sense of the impossible. The house no longer obeyed the rules of reality. The snow wasn't confined to the yard or the porch anymore. It had learned to move, to shape itself, to manipulate the world around me. A faint memory flickered, the elderly woman at the store. Her eyes sharp, her voice a whisper, almost amused yet grave. "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." I had thought it a simple warning. I had been wrong. It wasn't about avoidance. It was about recognition, understanding, respect for something far older than me, far colder, far alive. The figure appeared again, shimmering, delicate yet impossibly fast. Its tiny hand shot out, pointing toward the corner of the living room. I followed its motion with wide, terrified eyes. There, half buried in the frost, was an envelope, old, yellowed, edges curling like dead leaves. My name was scrawled on it in faint, elegant handwriting, the same handwriting as the list the woman had clutched at the grocery store. I tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "If you touch the snow, you awaken it. If you ignore it, it awakens you. You are chosen." A gust of wind, or something that wasn't wind, rushed through the room. Frost spiraled along the floor, climbing my legs in delicate, icy fingers. I dropped the paper, backing away, but the figure followed, circling me, its whispers growing louder. "Chosen, chosen, chosen." I thought of my husband, gone for the night, unaware, safe in his ignorance. I wanted to call him, but the phone was dead. The snow had claimed the signals, the connections, the very air around me. I tried to think logically. What could this be? A spirit, a curse, an intelligence beyond comprehension. But the answer eluded me. All I knew was that the snow was patient, cold, precise, and it had singled me out. Then the floor beneath my feet shifted. Not wood, not carpet, ice, solid, glimmering ice forming in intricate patterns, spiraling outward from the figure. My vision blurred as I stumbled backward. "You ignored the warning. You delayed the choice." The whispers hissed, closer, circling me like a predator's laughter. I realized that the woman at the store hadn't just warned me. She had guided me, the envelope, the words, the frost, all part of a ritual I hadn't understood, a test I hadn't realized I was taking. I sank to the floor, clutching my knees. The figure paused, floating above me, small yet commanding, like a fragment of winter itself. Its glow pulsed with life, illuminating the room in icy light. And then I understood, the snow wasn't just alive. It remembered, it responded. It punished, it waited. I had two choices: attempt to flee and risk awakening its full force, or confront it, face the truth the woman had whispered in that store, and hope survival was possible. A shiver ran down my spine. The figure raised both hands now, and the whispers coalesced into one word, clear and deliberate. Begin. I rose slowly, shaking, the icy floor gripping my feet like living chains. The figure hovered, just a few inches above the spiraling frost, its glow pulsating, rhythm echoing the thundering of my heart. Begin, it repeated, voice crystalline, almost melodic, yet edged with danger. I swallowed hard, forcing my trembling legs to carry me forward. Every step felt like walking across thin ice over an abyss. The air around me thickened, heavy and biting. Frost spiraled up the walls, crawling toward the ceiling like snakes of silver. The house itself seemed to bow under its weight. I realized the snow wasn't just alive, it was everywhere. Watching, judging, reacting. I tried to speak, to ask it questions, to plead, but words froze in my throat. My breath came in white puffs, cold and sharp. The figure extended a delicate arm, and the floor beneath me shimmered and shifted again, forming a path leading to the center of the living room. I understood instinctively, this was the place. The center, the heart of the snow's intelligence. The place where the warning had meant the most. My mind raced. Could I run? Could I fight? Could I reason with something that wasn't human? That existed in dimensions I couldn't even imagine. Each option seemed impossible, yet I had no choice but to confront it. I stepped onto the icy path. The snow beneath my boots sparkled, sending shards of light dancing across the walls. Each step sent faint ripples through the floor, as if the snow itself were testing me, evaluating my resolve. The figure tilted its head, curious now, like a teacher watching a student struggle through the first lesson. The whispers surged, layering on top of one another, forming a crescendo of voices. Do you understand? Do you respect? Do you obey? I tried to steady my voice. I don't know. I only wanted to survive. The figure paused, the snow stilled for a heartbeat. Then, impossibly fast, a surge of frost burst upward, spiraling around me. Tiny shards cut through the air, glittering like diamonds, freezing the edges of my hair and skin. My heart hammered in my chest. Terror and fascination collided. You were warned, you were chosen. The voice hissed, closer, inside my head now, echoing every fear I had ever held. You may live if you understand. I realized what it wanted: recognition, respect, acceptance. The snow didn't simply punish, it demanded comprehension of its power, its existence. I focused, forcing my mind to quiet the terror. I studied the patterns on the floor, the spirals of frost, the delicate humanoid figure suspended in icy light. I whispered aloud, shaking, I understand, I respect you, I will not disturb you. The glow pulsed once, then twice. The frost around me began to recede, swirling upward like a vortex, returning to the sky. The house seemed to exhale, releasing tension I hadn't realized it had held. The figure floated closer, delicate hand reaching toward me. I braced myself. The touch, when it came, was cold, yes, but not cruel. It was the chill of winter itself, sharp but alive, acknowledging my comprehension. And then it vanished. The snow in the yard, the porch, the floors all settled, still, silent, as though nothing had happened. Yet I knew better. I had been chosen, tested, and somehow survived. I sank to the floor, chest heaving, frost melting from my skin. The memory of the grocery store woman returned in full clarity. She hadn't just warned me, she had passed the mantle, the secret, the knowledge of something older than myself. Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the frosted windows. The yard glimmered innocently, inviting and deceptive. The snow had returned to sleep, patient, waiting, knowing I would never forget. And I realized, with a shiver that was no longer fear, but awe, that some warnings were never up. Dawn's light spilled through the frosted windows. Soft and pale, the house looked normal again, almost mundane, as though the night's terror had been nothing more than a dream. Yet every instinct in me screamed otherwise. I knew the snow was still alive, still watching, still waiting. The yard gleamed with untouched snow, pristine, perfect, deceptive in its serenity. My boots crunched faintly as I stepped outside, careful not to disturb a single flake. Every instinct told me, don't touch it. Don't even breathe on it too hard. I remembered the grocery store woman, her eyes knowing, her whisper echoing, when your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard. She had prepared me. She had given me knowledge I barely understood. a key I had used instinctively. Somehow I had passed the test. The air smelled of winter and frost, clean yet biting. Tiny reflections of sunlight shimmered across the yard, sparkling like diamonds on ice. I knelt and traced a fingertip along the edge of the snow. Careful, respectful, the snow did not move, it did not judge, not yet. Inside, the house was quiet. The frost that had climbed the walls melted slowly, dripping into harmless puddles. The whispers had vanished. The figure, the icy presence, had left. But the memory of its gaze, the delicate, intelligent frost, would never leave me. I made my coffee, hands still trembling. Every sound, the kettle's whistle, the clink of the spoon, felt amplified. I realized my life had changed. Something older, colder, infinitely patient now existed alongside me. Not inside me, but connected in a way I could never explain. I stepped to the porch, looking at the yard again. There was a subtle shimmer along the edge of the driveway, almost imperceptible, like the snow remembered me, like it waited for the next moment I might falter. I shivered, not from cold, but from understanding. Some warnings are more than words. Some warnings are alive. Some are patient enough to test you until you truly comprehend. And as I turned back toward the house, coffee in hand, I heard it once more soft, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable, carried on the wind. Do not forget. I froze, knowing the snow would keep its watch. Always patient, observant, waiting for the next winter, the next warning, the next choice. And I understood then, survival was not about strength. It was about respect, recognition, and above all, obedience. I sank into a chair, staring at the window. The sun reflected off the snow like a mirror, and I realized some mysteries never end. They wait patient, just beyond reach, whispering for those who are chosen to listen. Even now, years later, I never touch snow without remembering. And I never forget the woman, the grocery store, the whisper, and the yard that taught me the difference between curiosity and survival. Some things are alive, and some things are patient,